This video is sponsored by Wanderlust.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have in my hands what is arguably the most perfect camera ever created for me personally, and I have it in my hands right here. This is the Canon C70, and I am so excited to talk to you about it. Hey there, my name is Tyler Harrington. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new around here, please consider subscribing down below. That'd be absolutely amazing. If you're interested in the C70 and you want to see more videos just like this one, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any more videos. This is going to be my initial impressions and unboxing of this. It's not a full review. I just got it this morning, so can't really have a full review of it yet, but I'm going to have lots more C70 content coming out. And if you have anything specific that you want to see about the C70, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you want to see and I'll make sure that I cover it in a future video. Let me give you a quick, really brief history lesson on my camera usage and where I've been in terms of cameras. So I have been using Canon cameras for about 10 years now. I got my first ever DSLR way back in 2010. It was a Canon Rebel XSI, if that doesn't date me any. From there, I went up to the 60D, then the 5D Mark III. I used to do photography professionally back in the day, while I was also, getting into video and stuff like that. Then I jumped over into the Cinema line, and I got the C100 Mark I, followed by the C100 Mark II, and I used those two cameras pretty much exclusively for video stuff for about 5 years. And then just recently, in early 2020, I just picked up the C200, which I'm using to film right now. And last year in 2019, when my daughter was born, I bought the Canon EOS R. So all that to say, I have been very passionate and very vocal about my love for the Canon, specifically their Cinema line. I have an entire video that I can link up here talking about why I love the C100. But basically the Sports Center version of that is that I love all of the features that used to be exclusive to cinema cameras. Nowadays, with some of the new cameras, you actually can get a lot of these features in some of the mirrorless cameras, which is really awesome. But the features that I love the most are things, like dual slot recording, long battery life, unlimited recording times, built-in ND filters, XLRs built into the body. All these different cinema features are things I absolutely loved. Waveform monitors, peaking, zebras, all those different features. And while as a wedding filmmaker, I definitely was sacrificing a lot to get those features because obviously the C100s are significantly larger and heavier and more cumbersome to kind of like use and operate on a wedding day than your 5D Mark IVs, your mirrorless cameras, those types of things. But I was always willing to make that sacrifice. I was always willing to sacrifice on the size and the portability that I was missing out on from these smaller cameras because I loved all those cinema features so much, which is why I'm so excited about the C70 here, because this right here gives me everything I've always loved about the cinema cameras. It gives me the built-in ND filters, XLRs, peaking, zebras. It adds features I don't even have in my C200 here. Everything I could ever want in terms of cinema features in a body that is much more reasonable to carry around and in a body that actually fits into my backpack. So I'm really excited to talk about this camera. This is, like I said, just gonna be my kind of like initial thoughts and impressions. Again, having owned all of these other cinema cameras and used them a ton, I have a lot of just like things that stick out to me right away when I pick this up. Things that are just, as I've been messing around with it for one day, that are just like very, very obvious to me because I have such ingrained muscle memory with these other cinema cameras. I've been shooting with the C100s for 6 years, right? So like when I pick up something that's similar but different, my brain is very aware of those things. So those are the kind of things I want to talk about in this video. Now, I'm not really a huge fan of like full unboxing videos, but I did film my initial reaction to opening the box earlier today. I just want to give you a little heads up before I show this. There's going to be some loud banging going on. We're getting new siding on our house right now, but I was too excited to open this camera that I couldn't wait until they left. So I just went ahead and opened it up. So you're going to hear probably some loud banging and stuff like that. But let's cut to that real quick so you can kind of just see my initial impressions, my initial thoughts, just holding it for the very first time. Okay. Here it is. Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, heck yes. Okay, this is way too tight. Let's see. Ooh. Baby, look at that. Oh, it's so perfect. Oh, it feels so good. Okay, so this is it, the C70. Man, it feels really good. That is so close. Oh my gosh, can you see? It's not gonna focus on this. Let's see. Can you see how close that flange distance is on with the RF mount? That's wild. Man, oh, it feels so good. Like this is the camera that I've wanted for such a long time. Like I could not have probably built a more perfect camera than this if I had tried. And I love the C200. Like, don't get me wrong, this is like a fantastic camera, but for what I do and the type of work that I do in weddings and all that sort of stuff, like this is going to be so huge. The touch screen, oh my gosh. So we've been outsourcing our wedding editing to Wanderlust for years, and it has by far been the best business decision we've ever made. For years, I fought the idea of outsourcing because every company I'd found up until that point had either been too expensive to be realistic, or they just didn't meet the quality expectations that I had for my films. Until we found Wanderlust. Wanderlust was able to edit all of our wedding films at a price that made sense for our price point and at a quality that I was super, super happy with. And the process is super simple. You just choose the type of film you need edited, answer some specific questions about your project, and send over the footage. Everything is managed from a streamlined portal where you can chat with the Wanderlust team with any specific questions you might have, manage your revisions, and so on. Their turnaround times are quick and they have never missed a deadline. If you feel like your editing backlog is holding you back from living your life or growing your business, you need to give Wanderlust a try. Thank you again to Wanderlust for sponsoring today's video. If you want to save $50 on your first edit with Wanderlust, simply click on the link in the description below and you can try them out to see what it's all about. All right, so you got to hear some of my initial thoughts and first impressions, literally just holding this thing for the first time. But since then I've been able to organize some of my thoughts, I'm just gonna run through the things I think that stick out to me the most and that I think are the most significant about this camera. So first thing, just in terms of the feel and the size and all those types of things, it feels really, really great. The grip over here, I really love how this feels. It definitely feels like a big DSLR. I think people are comparing it most similarly to like a 1DX, which I've never actually owned, but you know, I used to put battery grips on my you know, my 5D Mark III and things like that. So it feels very similar to that, but it just fits really great in your hand. Now, obviously it's not modular, which is different than all the other cinema cameras where you could take the handles off and kind of move them around and stuff like that. But it definitely doesn't bother me. I think it's a really, really great size. It does have this kind of strange little bump on the back here where, you know, the actual thickness of the main camera itself isn't super thick, but then you kind of have this bump here, but it feels relatively balanced, even though it is a little bit like, it's not perfectly symmetrical on the back. It still feels really balanced in your hand. It does have this weird kind of like gritty texture on it, which I don't really love. It's not a huge deal. Where you hold the camera in your hand here isn't like that, but like some of the other parts of it have this kind of gritty texture. Now this thing, I'll talk about this at the end, like the things I don't like. This handle, somebody messed up when they made this handle because this thing feels like you're holding a nail file. Like it's way too, can you hear this? It's just way too like gritty and it's just like the wrong kind of, it just sends all sorts of wrong, it's all sorts of wrong vibes. But all in all, like, feel-wise, this feels really great. I like the way the buttons are laid out. Some of them are a little weird to reach. I'll talk more about the buttons in a second here, but all in all, it feels great. It feels like a really good size, and even with the, you know, with the lens and with an adapter on it, it still feels really, really balanced. Okay, so aside from the size and the portability, the thing that I'm the most excited about with this camera is gonna just be the codecs and the just the variety of shooting abilities and things that they packed into this camera. Now, Canon is notorious for handicapping their cameras, like taking away software features just to save other more expensive cameras in their line. They didn't really do this with this. They didn't pull a whole lot of punches when it came to this camera. It has pretty much everything you could ever want. It Finally, we have the 10-bit 422 color. Now this is gonna be amazing for color grading, and just to have that high quality, high bit depth in a camera like this is something that has been long awaited. One of the most disappointing things about the C200, honestly, is its lack of codecs and other, software features. This amazing camera with lots of physical abilities is handicapped so severely by software limitations, right? With the C200, you can either shoot 8-bit 420 4K, which is fine, or 12-bit RAW. That's it. Like, those are your two options. There's nothing really in between. And this camera gives you everything you could pretty much ever want in terms of codecs. It gives you 10-bit 422. It gives you 4K 120, 4K 60. It gives you multiple different sizes of 4K. It gives you interframe and long GOP formats, so you can have, really high quality. You can have something that's a little bit less quality, a little bit more compressed, save on your memory card space. Depending on what it is that you're doing, you can find the perfect combination of codecs and settings to meet your shooting needs. And it gives you all of the Canon logs. Finally, you can get Canon Log 1, Canon Log 2, and Canon Log 3. This Canon Log 2 is only available on the C200 if you're shooting in RAW. And even if you're shooting in RAW, you can't monitor it properly because it will not display C-Log 2 properly on this camera. So you're kind of just guessing in terms of exposure until you get it into the computer and just hoping that you're exposing correctly. With this, we get all three. We can monitor them correctly. We can put the LUTs on so we can see what it's going to look like. We just have all the different combinations and variety of any type of shooting style you would ever want to have is all packed into this camera, and I'm so thankful that Canon didn't handicap this camera like it has so many others. And to top it all off, it also has the DGO, the dual gain output sensor, found in the C300 Mark III. So basically what this means is you're gonna get crazy dynamic range. It's gonna make so that a lot of the other Canon cameras in the past have struggled, especially shooting in log, in shadows. The shadows are really noisy. With this DGO, this dual gain output sensor, none of that is gonna be a problem. You can shoot it properly exposed and you don't have to worry about your shadows. It's just everything you could, honestly, it's everything I could ever want except for RAW. And to be honest with you, I don't really need RAW that much. I'm talking about this at the end. I'm getting ahead of myself, but like, I don't really need RAW. Honestly, I don't really shoot it very often on the C200. The only reason I would shoot it is so that I can get that 12-bit and I don't have to shoot an 8-bit, but I don't really need the actual RAW support. So this is the perfect amount of codecs and options that I need for shooting. Another huge improvement that I'm already loving on this C70 here is the way that they laid out the menus and specifically the touch functionality. So what they've actually done on this camera is that they've made it so that you can adjust all of your settings right from the touch screen, right from like the quick access menu. So you can change your shutter angle, you can change your ISO, you can change your aperture, you can change your ND filters, all from the touchscreen right here. And then to go even further, they make it super easy to change all of your really important settings. So let me show you. So just directly from the menu right here, you just touch in this bottom corner and you get access to pretty much everything. So down here, you can change your Kelvin, you can change your ND filter, you can change your ISO, your shutter angle. I don't have a lens on here now, but you can also change your aperture. And then over here, it gives you the ability to change and to turn on and off all of your different tools that you might want to have. So you can turn your waveform monitor on and off. You can change what type of waveform monitor that it is. You can turn your LUTs on and off. You can turn any sort of markers that you have on and off. All these different things I used to have programmed specifically into the My Menu system of my C200 or C100. And every time I wanted to change any of these things, I had to go into the menus, go really fast, try and change it really quickly, or try and program a button specifically to go change that thing. Not anymore. It's all literally just right here. You can turn false color on and off. You can turn your different zebras on. All these things right here at your fingertips, super easy to use. And then up here in the top left-hand corner, they give you even more options. You can change your recording mode if you want to go into, fast or slow motion. You can change what kind of recording you are, if you're going to be in, dual slot recording, or if you want to change to be able to shoot, like, you can shoot really high quality to card A and shoot proxies to card B. You can change it all really quickly right here. You slide over. Now you can change really quickly all those different codecs and all those things we were talking about. You can change all of it right here. You can change your log format. You can change what, XAVC, XF AVC, you can change to MP4, you can change your resolution and your bit size, you can change your frame rates, all right here, all really quickly right at the tips of your fingers. And then you've got some more options down here depending on what you have set up, proxies and those types of things. But it's all just right here. And that alone makes this camera so nice to use, because you don't have to spend hours and hours and hours customizing your My Menu system. You don't have to learn this camera inside and out before you ever shoot with it. You don't have to, if someone new is, you're shooting with somebody who's never used the camera before, you don't have to explain to them what all of your custom function buttons do and how it all works and things like that. You can hand this camera to anybody and they'll instantly know how to change all these things. It's so intuitive. So I think this paired with all the other stuff just makes it like so great. The next thing that I noticed is the button layout. I think that they did a really great job using this small amount of real estate they had to work with. I think that there are a ton of buttons on here, and more than you'll ever probably need to use. I think they're in really smart places, and I think that it's just, I think it's just really smart what they've done. It's genius that they put the audio, all the audio interface on the back behind the screen here. You don't lose any of the functionality that you have on the C100 or the C200. It's all in here. I thought for sure that you'd have to sacrifice something, or you may not be able to have all the physical dials that you did, but no, they fit it all in here. Where the buttons are, like I said, I just think is really well laid out. The buttons feel good. They have a good press feel to them. They're definitely a little bit on the smaller side compared to some of the, the bigger cinema cameras, but they're definitely not too small by any means. I love that they added these extra dials. There is a dial on the top here. There's a dial on the back, and there's the spinny wheel dial, much like, again, like the R6 or the R5 would have, which I think just makes using this camera so much better. I think all in all, again, they've combined like the functionality and the usability that you'll find from a mirrorless camera with all the cinema features. And I think that they finally married them in the perfect way that feels so natural. And then it's even like just the little things, like these port covers on here are they're really nice. They're a hard plastic. They feel, it's a very satisfying like snap when they go in. They're not really hard to get out. They sit very flush on the side here. You can tell they're just like really well thought out, really well engineered. And just the fact that you have so many, we've got 2 mini XLRs, a mic jack, a headphone jack, a USB, a remote jack, a full HDMI, and then on the front over here, we have the time code. And I just even like, again, where they put the SD card slot right here on the grip, where you don't even notice that it's there, but they've got to get creative with the way they're doing a lot of these things. 2 big buttons on the front. It's just, I couldn't have asked for more. I never thought you could fit this many buttons and this much like, functionality into the physical sides of a camera, but they did it, and it's amazing. Next big thing that I noticed is this screen. This is the best screen that I've ever had on a cinema camera. For some reason, the Canon Cinema line, they have terrible screens on all of their cameras. The worst by far is the C100 Mark I. Then the C200, actually. The C200 has a surprisingly not great screen. I liked personally the screen on the C100 Mark II the best out of all of the cinema cameras that I've owned, but this one blows all of them out of the water. It's really sharp. It's bright. It's easy to see. It feels more like a Retina display. Like it feels more like you're using an Apple product than anything else. Again, it feels very similar to the screens on the R6, the R5, the EOS R. The touch on this, again, feels just like the mirrorless Canon cameras. Really good. Again, one thing I was really disappointed with at the C200 is how bad the touch is on this screen. It feels really sluggy and sluggish and mushy, and it just doesn't react very well to you. It's very slow. You can't use it for any of the menus. You really only can use it for autofocus, and it's not really responsive at all. So this one is the opposite of that. It's super fast, super snappy, super responsive. You can use it for a lot more of the menus and like the stuff I showed you earlier. It flips all the way around. The only thing that I'm a little nervous about is this feels a little bit flimsy over here. Like when it's out fully like this, it doesn't feel like super secure. Like if you were to bump it into something, it wouldn't just snap off. So we'll have to see. Only time will tell in terms of how durable it's going to end up being. But, all in all, I'm just really impressed and excited to use this screen. Next up, I want to talk about the autofocus. Again, just from messing around with this for a few minutes, the autofocus on this feels so good. It feels just like, I'm going to keep repeating myself, the R6, the R5, the EOS R. It just feels super, super snappy. It tracks really well. And I think, again, having that really nice touchscreen makes you feel a lot more confident in your ability to follow it around. The autofocus on the C200 is not bad by any means. It's really good, but this feels just so much better. I just feel much more confident in this than I do with the C200. When I'm shooting on my EOS R on the gimbal, I'm using autofocus the entire time because I never take it off the gimbal. I never ever manual focus my EOS R ever. I trust the autofocus that much, and that's how I feel about this camera. And then that's just using an adapted, on both the EOS R and this, using adapted lenses, I can't even imagine how good the autofocus and the tracking is going to be if I put a native RF lens on here. So I'll have to test that out. I have some friends who own RF lenses. I don't actually own any, but I'll be able to borrow some of theirs and do some testing with the RF lenses and the autofocus. But it's really, really great. They have an awesome tracking feature on here where you hit one button to enable like tracking mode. Then you can just tap on anything on the screen and it'll lock onto that. And as long as it stays in the frame, it doesn't lose it. It is super, super impressive. I don't know what they're doing. I know they're using a new type of algorithm and like machine learning to track things and stuff like that. But it's really great. The face tracking is even more reliable in this than I felt in my C200. It's really, really nice. And it has the ability now to track the back of heads, which is nice because that was one thing I ran into a lot of problems with on wedding days and things like that. If I wanted to use the face tracking autofocus on a camera that was on the C200, if it was like on a tripod and I wasn't monitoring it for the entire ceremony, if somebody would turn around, it would lose the bride or the groom or whoever it was if they turned their head, and it would jump to like a bridesmaid or a groomsman or somebody standing in the background, and then it would never come back. And it was just kind of annoying. So this can actually, once you lock it on the person you want, it'll actually track the back of their head as well. So it's just better. It's just better all in all. Again, Canon has always had great autofocus, and this just takes it to a whole nother level. The next thing to talk about is the fact that this is an RF mount. I'm actually really excited about this. I think it's really smart of Canon to go in this direction. The nice thing about the RF mount is that you can adapt it to pretty much anything else. So I already own the Canon adapter. The Canon adapters for the RF mounts are absolutely amazing. There's pretty much a zero loss in quality or performance or anything like that using the adapters. So the fact that I can put an adapter on here, use all of my EF lenses I already own, and see no performance drops is really awesome. And this means now that I can start considering buying RF lenses. The future is RF. RF is where Canon is headed. That is what they've committed to. They're very vocal about the fact that they're pretty much no longer supporting the EF line, and they're completely pouring all of their R&D, all of their energy, all of their everything into the RF mount and the line and all those types of things. So buying an EF lens doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I can use it on here, but also if I buy an RF lens, then I can't use that lens on my C200 at all. So I either need to sell my C200 and buy another C70, which honestly may end up happening, or I'm just gonna keep adapting for a while. The other thing too with this being a cropped sensor is that there aren't a ton of great RF lenses that will give me the width that I would want or need. So like, for example, the 28 to 70 2.0 is a really amazing lens for full frame cameras. And I could put it on here, but then it would be more of like a 50 to 100 kind of a scenario. It just wouldn't be wide enough. So for now, I'm gonna keep rocking my Sigma 18 to 35 f1.8, which is my like favorite lens, one I'm using right now. And I'll put that on here, and I'll have to figure something out in terms of like what I'm gonna do for the gimbal. I guess I'll just use the 18 to 35, it'd probably be fine. But yeah, I'm just in a weird place now, but I'm excited to start being able to potentially explore RF lenses, especially because now I have the EOS R in this guy. But I think it's smart. The fact that I have the option to do both is really, really nice. So thanks for that, Canon. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about on this camera is gonna be the audio options. Again, mini XLR is not ideal, but I get it, right? It's a really small camera, a really small body. There's no way they could fit full-size XLRs in here. I much prefer that they have the mini XLRs than putting the XLR into the handle. So like on the C100 and the C100 Mark II, the XLR ports are built into the handle. So you have to have the handle to have XLR. The C200 is nice because the XLR ports are built right into the body. So even if you don't have the handle, or if you're running on a gimbal or something like that, and you want to take the handle off, you still have your XLR. So that's really nice. So I do think I'd rather have them mini XLR on the body than full-size XLR on the handle. So that's not a big deal. One thing I really love about this that is also in the C200 is the fact that you can do 4-channel audio. So basically you can run channel 1 is, your first XLR, your second XLR, then you have a third audio channel that you can do that is the mic jack. So if you have like a shotgun mic on here or something like that. And then you can also run that 4th track, which is going to be your scratch, internal built-in mic. So that is just it's really nice that you have the functionality to be able to do that. It has this audio status button on the back that is also on the C200, and that is really nice because you click on that button, you can get right into all of your audio settings really quickly. But again, they've redone the interface for this, so it's much, much better than the C200, and it's much more understandable, and I feel much more confident setting this up than sometimes with the C200. I'm like, I don't really know if it's right, especially when I first got it. So all of that is really great. So the fact that you get all the same functionality in here audio-wise is a dream. And then a few miscellaneous things I just want to talk about. Batteries. I love that it uses the same battery as the C200 because I already own a C200, so I have the batteries. It has the BPA 30 it comes with, which is the smaller one. I own a BPA 60, which is an extended one. I've heard that the battery life is really great. I haven't had long enough time to test it out, but between those two, I should have plenty of time. And I also now have 3 batteries I can use for this camera, or 3 I can use for the C200. So I think that that's great. You expect good battery life from this. You can plug it directly into the wall, which is amazing. That's my favorite thing about the Cinema cameras. One of my favorite things is that you can do that. The memory card situation is a little tricky. I bought some, hold on, let me open it. I bought a V60 SD2 card, about 250 megabytes a second, thinking that this would be fast enough, but it's not. Some of the really high quality options and the XF AVC options, I recorded for 3 seconds and it would tell me my buffer is full. So I'm probably going to return this and get some V90s. I was hoping to get away with the V60 because it's cheaper, but you have to go with the V90. So not a huge deal. I'm glad that it's SD cards and not it didn't have to go with CFast or anything like that. And the fact that you can have 2 of them, for example, the R5 shoots to CFast and to SD. So you kind of have to have 2 different types of media, 2 different card readers, all sorts of stuff. And then you're kind of limited into what you can record where, and you can't really do dual recording. If something has to go to the CFast card, you can't also record it to the SD card. So the fact that it's 2 SD cards is really, really, really nice. And then the other thing that I'm excited for in the future is that Canon has talked about, they've already announced it and released it, but it's not available yet, it's basically a speed booster made by Canon that attaches directly onto the front here and will basically turn all of your lenses into full frame lenses and give them, I think, a full stop of light. So that's really exciting. It's like $500 or $600, so it's not cheap, but if it works as well as it does, and they have compatibility for all EF lenses, or even just my 24-70, which would be awesome. I think it'd be worth it for that. That is really, really awesome that Canon's doing that, and I'm excited for that. So that's just one added little bonus coming in the future. So if it sounds like it's too good to be true, I don't know what to tell you. I feel like it's too good to be true, to be honest with you. There are some downsides. It's not perfect. There are some things you might be missing out on. So there's no RAW, which again, depending on who you are and the type of workflow that you have, that may or may not matter. For me, it doesn't really matter that much. I'd rather have the 10-bit 422 4K not RAW than have limited options I could do in my C200. So it's kind of a con if you need RAW, but it doesn't really matter to me. It's a super 35mm sensor, which again, I don't really care about because I've been shooting on C100s and C Cinema cameras with super 35mm sensors for years. But if you like the full frame look, it's not going to look like that. The speed booster option to give you that full frame will be really cool when it comes. But for right now, it's super 35. And the only downside I honestly think to super 35 is it's harder to get really wide shots. So a 24 on here just isn't a wide angle lens anymore. So it's a little tricky to get super wide shots, but it's not really a con unless you really want that full frame look. The C70 doesn't have an SDI port. I've never really experienced SDI until I've had it on my C200. And while I do like it, I like the fact that it's a locking mechanism. I don't really ever see myself in a position where I need to have that. I do know that you can run like SDI longer lengths without losing quality and all. There's reasons in pro workflows why you would need SDI. And if you need SDI, you probably already know that. But if you don't, then I wouldn't worry about it. They did include a timecode sync port on the front, which I don't really have any need for. But if you have a C300 or you're in a world where you need timecode, it's nice that that's on there. It doesn't really matter as much to me. I kind of wish it was SDI, but I get it, like why they didn't do that. For me and what my needs, HDMI is going to be more than enough. And then the lack of modularity can be looked at, I guess, as a good thing or a bad thing. Again, it kind of just depends on your needs. You know, with the C200, you can add V-mount batteries and you can take the grip off and you can reposition it and you can take the handle off and you can put it into a cage and do all sorts of cool things with it. And if you're in a world where you need that, then that's amazing. You can't really do that with this. It'll be much more difficult to do that. I'm sure cages will come out for it and I'm sure there will be, you know, ways to kind of add to it. But for the most part, you're probably not going to be buying this because you want to rig it out. So again, that's kind of, I'm having a hard time finding some cons here, people. That's kind of a con, I guess, if you need it to be like that. But I'm kind of stretching in terms of cons. The biggest con, in my personal opinion, is really just the price. At $500, $500 or whatever it ends up being, it's kind of hard to recommend to just like everybody. You know, whereas the R6, which, you know, has a lot of great video features, is in like $2,500. You could buy 2 of those and have money left over. To buy, you know, one of these. So that's a little bit tricky. And looking at something like an A7S III, again, is significantly less expensive than this camera. So it just makes it difficult to recommend to everybody. Or if you need to buy multiples, that's where it starts getting hard. If you want to have like 4 of these, you know, that's a big investment. But if you can afford it and you're at a place where you know that you need and you want the cinema features, because really that's what you're paying for. Because in terms of codecs and all those things, like I'm ranting and raving about it, but honestly, you can get pretty much all of those codecs or like the Sony equivalent in the A7S III for significantly less money, about $1,500 less. And then you'd have, you know, that money to go buy a lens or, you know, what have you. So really what you're paying for when you jump up to this camera here is you're paying for the cinema features. You're paying for the ND filters. You're paying for the audio input. You're paying for the battery life. You're paying for like all these different things. Like that's what you're paying for. So if you're somebody who values those things heavily and it's really important to you to have those, like it is to me, then this is great. Like this is a really, really great option. And like I said, for me, in what I value, this is pretty much the perfect camera. Like I've only had it for a day, so I'm gonna kind of hold my full like awarding of this camera, that title for a little bit. But aside from like a few little quirky things, like this is pretty much perfect for what I need. It may not be perfect for you. It may be more than you need. It may be things you don't care about. You don't care about ND filters, so then that's fine. But like for me, it's pretty much the perfect camera. This is definitely the future as well. I mean, the RF mount is where Canon is headed. This is kind of just where things are going. And I'm excited. I'm excited for this camera. This is the first cinema camera I've ever bought on release day. That's how excited I was about it. Every other camera I've bought a couple years old, including the C200. So time will tell. We'll see what happens with my C200. I don't really know what I'm going to do with it still. I really love the C200. It's a great, great camera. It's just really frustrating that it's so handicapped by those software limitations. So that alone makes it really tricky for me to want to hold on to it. Plus the size, plus all this stuff. When I get pretty much, 99% of what I love about this camera, I have right here in a much more small and compact package. So if you are still here, thank you so much. Leave some questions down below. Anything you want to know, anything you want me to test out, anything that you want to see, let me know. I want to make sure you have all the information you could possibly need to make an educated purchase in regards to this camera. So leave those questions down below. There'll be more C70 content coming, I promise. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, want to see more like it, subscribe down below, all the YouTube things. Thank you all for watching. My name is Tyler Harrington. I'll see you next time.